Well, I'm really sad that we lost the incredible Catherine here today. Hopefully I will be a decent stand-in for this one. So I want to start off by introducing everyone to our incredible panelists here today. So we have Laura Kilcrease. She's the CEO of Alberta Innovates. And hold on, All right, so we also wanted to introduce everybody with like a fun fact as opposed to like just reading a bio. So fun fact about Laura is she was recruited from Austin, Texas to come here to lead Alberta Innovates, and it has been such a pleasure meeting you and getting to know you as you've taken on this role. I absolutely love what you've been doing with Alberta Innovates. Next, we have the incredible Brenda Beckedorf. I met her when she just took on her role with Alberta IoT, and I have to say, wow, lady, you have been truly killing it. She is the executive director of this organization. Her fun fact is that she is a very passionate hiker and mountain biker, and I definitely know that because on her social media, I see her hiking almost every weekend, regardless of the temperature. I don't know how she does it. I wish I loved the outdoors just that much. Next, we have the incredible Justin Remir. He is the Assistant Deputy Minister for Prairies Economic Development Canada. I have known him for a few years now, an incredible, passionate advocate. I believe there was a recent announcement that came out for the support for Platform Calgary and some others in our tech ecosystem, so absolutely incredible human being. And his fun fact is he's been doing economic development in the province for 25 years. Now, if that is not dedication, I don't know what is. And his son is a growing YouTube celebrity and has way more interesting life than he does. I don't know about that, but all right, you gotta hit me up with his YouTube link. I'm curious on this one. And last but absolutely not least, we have Russ Erickson. So he is the Vice President of Investment and Partnerships at Amii. And his fun fact is outside of his passions for tech and AI, Russ is a sports enthusiast, including coaching an 18U baseball team. You need to chat with Jade. He loves baseball too, by the way. And even still playing beer league hockey. Okay, you're gonna have to explain that one when we get to you. He encourages you to never watch him or his team play hockey. Grab a few beers. It'll probably, you won't notice. It may feel to them like you're going fast, but they are most decidedly not. Okay, that is like an awesome fun fact. So round of applause, let's welcome our amazing panelists here today. All right, awesome. So I'm going to start off with my first question, and it's open dialogue, right? So there's no particular person this is being lobbied to, hoping to make it more of an engaging conversation. We're going to talk for a little bit, and then you guys have an opportunity to get the wonderful catch boxes thrown at you. Ideally, it won't hit your head. And then ask our amazing panelists some questions. So one of Canada's greatest technology sector advantages is the strength of its ecosystem. What do you think contributes to our culture of collaboration? Ooh, don't everyone jump up at once, don't worry.
Okay, I'll just jump in. I think at the end of the day, a really great ecosystem is based on trust. It's not about the scarcity of resources, it's about the trust in each other of how we get things done and we help each other to get things done. And I think one of the things here is there is not one ecosystem across Canada, but multiple ecosystems. We think of them as, we kind of mix them up between innovation ecosystems, entrepreneurial ecosystems, and other ecosystems, because they kind of blend together. But if I really think about how an ecosystem really works well, I think number one beyond trust is you have to have a shared dream. And I think we in this province have a shared dream. And by all means, correct me with your own views. But I think we have a shared dream. And ostensibly, we may talk about it under the guise of diversification of the economy and well-being without the roller coaster of any single industry. But really, our shared dream is what we want for the next 2 generations that we can influence. Our shared dream is goodness for them and the things that they need. Second, I think you need to have a very motivated challenge of what that may be, and that's where I think the diversification and from my perspective, obviously innovation comes in. But a motivated challenge is no good without the champions, and we all need a handful of champions that are going to do whatever's necessarily to actually kind of harness the energies of that ecosystem. We shouldn't go for big wins. I'm not saying don't go for big wins. I'm just saying they shouldn't be the only things. Lots of small wins teach us lessons to get to the big wins. We have to have a safe environment for us to do this, because whatever we're doing something new and different that may not have been done before. And then when we have success, let's make sure that we celebrate that success. It may not be ours, it may be someone else's. Let's celebrate that success, because the more we do, the more we reinforce the capability of that ecosystem to work. So that's my thoughts.
I love it. So from my perspective, I came into this role 2 years ago from private sector, so it was a bit of an adjustment getting to understand what the ecosystem was. I also got involved with AIoT Canada, which is based out of Quebec and Ontario, with the focus of making sure that we had that pan-Canadian relationship. And what I've seen over the last 2 years, because we've had some very challenging last 2 years, is that everyone started to row together and started to work together, because we knew that there was this big obstacle in front of us. And the two key things that I thought was really interesting was traditional oil and gas companies, traditional construction, health, were starting to pivot into the IoT space for us, but moving into the digital space and looking for support. And that made us stronger on the world market. And the other part is, as we played Alberta IoT in the international market, we started to hear about Alberta more and more in that market. And there was a recognition that we hit this pivotal point somewhere in the last 6 months, 8 months, where we have enough tech companies in Alberta that it's worthwhile for talent to come to Alberta and find job 1, 2, and even 3. And that's a very critical point for us to have hit, and very exciting, because that means all of us are starting to work together for the greater good of Alberta. Thank you.
So just to amplify those points, I couldn't agree more. As mentioned in my bio, I've had the privilege of doing economic development and innovation support in this province for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I've seen a lot of competition, dysfunction, fragmentation within the ecosystem. And for years, we've been challenged with diversification. So I'm here to tell you today it's happened. It's not happening, it's happened. We have doubled the tech sector in this province over the past 2 years. And this past year we had another venture capital raise of over, I believe, $500 million within this province. There are fantastic things happening, but it takes more than money to do this. It takes leaders, as Laura and Brenda mentioned, leaders with a shared and collective vision. We're seeing a lot more alignment within the ecosystem these days, and a shared goal. Leaders in both the public and private sector pulling together. But necessity is the mother of invention, and I think it's these crises that we've collectively faced, COVID, the downturn in the energy sector and the energy transformation, that has compelled us to move in another direction with a sense of urgency, and that urgency is happening. Calgary has an abundance of entrepreneurial leaders who not only are interested in growing the wealth and prosperity of their own individual firms, but to support the community. And we see that in abundance, and people like Koleya and Brenda are great demonstrations of that, of how to raise a community of leaders towards a common goal and support one another. Because we're too small a jurisdiction to do this on our own. We need the collective help. The other thing that I think we've done over the past few years is we've done a lot of analysis as to what the gaps are. So as mentioned, for years we were focused on access to capital. That was the big gap Alberta was facing, the lack of venture capital. That's not so much an issue anymore. It's not that we've completely solved that issue, but we've certainly addressed it in a great degree, both public and private sector initiatives. But what's the big issue now is talent, and that's where we're all focused on in terms of how do we generate the talent and have that talent supply for the great growth opportunities that this province is making happen. So that's the next area of focus, and area that our ecosystem collectively needs to focus on to continue to strengthen our outcomes.
Well, that didn't leave a lot of room, but to go back to the original question, why Alberta, why do we do this well here? And it may sound a bit cliche, but complex problems, difficult problems take collaboration, and they take community, and nobody is able to do it on their own. And I think to Justin's point, I've been part of organizations that grew quite well, but largely tried to do it on their own. And it was, if we go back to, why were we successful on the prairies in the first place when they were first settled? It may sound cliche, but we have a pioneering spirit where you have no choice but to collaborate with each other, to live, to succeed, to thrive in this area, because we are small and we don't have a lot of scale, and we need to build that for sure. And again, building on Justin's point around talent and the earlier point around it's happening now. We've been growing the talent base, for example, with Amii, in the machine learning space. We used to lose almost all of our graduates in machine learning we've got one of the top 3 institutes in the world, and we used to send them all abroad. 10 years ago, probably 5% of our graduates stayed in Alberta. 5 years ago, 30% of our grads stayed in Alberta. Last year, 60% of our grads stayed in Alberta. So give them give them opportunities, and they will stay because they want to.
Okay, that I have to say that is amazing, because one of the key pieces is not having a brain drain. And one of the things that I've seen since I started over 15 years ago was we're losing the talent that we're growing at home, and the fact that we're now retaining over 60% is a massive win and something that deserves to be celebrated. And what I also love is seeing like the whole community is coming together, not just a part of the community. It's not just companies out for themselves, because they know we all go so much farther if we do it together. And I know it's just been such a pleasure working with all of your organizations on stuff like this and being able to come together for events like this to showcase, we are collaborative, and that's what moves us forward. Like in the prairies, yeah, of course, you moved here a while ago. Like you had to go ask your neighbor for help or borrow a cup of sugar, or, and we're always here. We're very friendly, lend that helping hand. So I love that. So my next question is, so some of the ecosystem I was not designed to be the moderator for this one, so forgive me. I didn't read these questions. All right, what are some of the ecosystem organizations that you think have the strongest impact on our technology economy, and what are some of the most important services they provide to the industry? I'm going to be shameless and say, yeah, mine.
Laura, you want me to start? So between Laura and I, we've probably funded a good chunk of the ecosystem in this province with a number of different organizations. So it's really hard of all the groups that have spawned out. Some have had a long track record, others are very new and nascent, and the results have yet to be seen. But I can tell you over the past few years, what we've been admiring around some groups is some phenomenal results out of creative destructive labs, for instance, out of the U of C. And one of the things that makes them great is they have great business leaders and entrepreneurs who are mentoring startup companies, but they're also putting their own money into those companies. So they're motivated to help those companies succeed. But we've seen just an explosion of accelerator and incubator type supports over the past little while. I wanted to share a brief story. I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, Laura, but thanks to Alberta Innovates leadership, we participated in a big RFP for a number of incubators, accelerators within the province, and we really identified a big gap in the scale-up support. Lots of support for startups, not so much for scale-up. Systematically, we brought in some international accelerators into this province now to really address that. And Laura and I were at the first graduate celebration of the 500 startups, 500 global cohort that graduated in Edmonton a couple of weeks ago. And I talked to a number of the founders that just went through this. I think it was an 11-week course. Every single one of them said it was the best course they'd ever taken. And a number of them have been in lots of different scale-up supports. So that to me says right there, we systematically address the gap by bringing in quality talent to help our entrepreneurs up that value chain. Stuff that Brenda's doing with IoT, just single-handedly, I'm not just saying this because she's sitting next to me, but it has been phenomenal in terms of scale-up support for a designated niche of this tech sector. So we're seeing a lot, but it's not, I don't want to give the impression that we only need to bring international experts in to tell us what to do and help us. There's been a lot of homegrown talent and support as well. CDO, Platform Calgary, Innovate Edmonton and its new iterations are growing. Those are support as well. It's not either or, it's both. And so those are just a couple examples from my perspective.
Yeah, and I would, you asked the question of a number of folks that really try, like really are key to the ecosystem. So it's hard to sit here and toot your own horn. I'll call out Prairie's Can actually as another, as one of those, one of the programs that Amii did recently with Prairie's Can was really to help celebrate a bunch of the success in AI and machine learning in Alberta, and telling many of the success stories that are here in the province, and we've seen really great traction with the exposure of those stories and the interest it continues to generate, and all of that begets a great environment for talent, for people to want to come here because they see the opportunities. And to stay here because they see the opportunities. So it's, there are, Justin named many of the great organizations that are doing very good work to help organizations. I'll add on the A100, a great organization for mentoring and for helping entrepreneurs advance and get from start to scale, like all the way through. They've been very involved in, again, telling the stories through initiatives like Start Alberta, and exposing the resources that are available for people, making it clear that where you can go for some of these for some of this help, and all of that helps. All of that helps to build that ecosystem.
So I'm sitting between two of my funders, so what am I supposed to say?
Well, if you say good things, the number might go up.
So shout out to Alberta Innovates.
So first of all, thank you. We will be making a couple announcements in the next week or two for these two wonderful folks here and their organization as they fund both our ongoing programs and some brand new programs, which we're really excited about. But I also want to give a shout out. We have an organization called CIC, so Calgary Innovation Corridor Coalition. And this is put on by Platform, Alberta Innovates, Rainforest, and there's 40 organizations involved. So I just became a director with them last week. And the whole focus of this is to bring us all together in the ecosystem and start rowing together and supporting each other. And a lot of it is, if we have an entrepreneur or a scale-up company that needs support and we can't help them, we can reach out within this organization to find that help. And we've been doing a lot of that. I had a company yesterday reach out to me saying, I needed a place to trial some new software, don't know where to go. And I reached out to CED, and within an hour we had that. So that's the whole point of what we're trying to do, is just bring ourselves together and work more collaboratively. So I definitely want to shout out to Beside Me, but also to this organization. Thanks.
I won't add much, but I would say one of the big differences that's happened in the last few years is the organizations are working together more. There's a mentality of let's make the pie bigger, not let's argue over which piece of the pie each of us have. And I think the example Justin gave on the accelerators, it seems like a nothing piece of work. Look, accelerators have been around a long time. The first incubator accelerator I started was 1989. I know I only look 16, but I've been around a little bit longer than that. And it still works today. It still raised $3.5 billion so far and exited more than that for the companies. But the point is, it wasn't any one group on their own. It was all them together. So the accelerator example that Justin mentioned, we did 2 years of work on that. We talked with Prairie's Can and said, let's align resources. We talked with CED and Innovate Edmonton. We talked with the cities. So for one of the few times in history, we got all three aligned so that once we'd sized the marketplace and understood what was needed in the acceleration space and at what stage, growth, ideation up to first product to the first $1 million in revenue, up to scale up, and then the market sectors that was needed in, it was easy for us to come together and work on this. We came together with 35 million on this we're spending in the next 3 years. Now, I actually think that's cheap. Please don't tell my boss tomorrow, the minister, because he may not think it's cheap. But it's cheap because within 9 years, we'll have over 900 companies, over $5 billion in new revenue, over 20,000 new jobs. And you'll say, well, Laura, that's a ways out, you know, kind of like, I've heard that stuff before. But let me tell you, just the first cohorts, and each of these groups are doing 2 cohorts, we'll have almost 200 companies out this year. And while I can't give you details, I know of 3 new venture funds that you will hear of that will be based here in Alberta that don't exist today or haven't existed here, that are being raised solely for people who go through those programs and others around. And that's the catalytic effect of us all working together. So when we talk about ecosystem organizations, I say to you, there's more than we can mention on this stage today. There's more people doing good work. Please go pat them on the back and give them some encouragement, because they're doing the hard work. And there'll be more of these players tomorrow as we grow this system, and that's what's important.
I love that. And a few others that, I know we can't mention them all, but like Startup TNT has done $7 million, I believe, or a little bit more into the startup space and helping to be that early catalyst to help companies grow. And that's, to me, a lot of money and a lot of support. And, you know, Platform Calgary's been doing amazing work. Like there's so many ecosystem development hubs. And I love with what you're now a director of, Brenda, because it is important if we all continue to do this together, we're going to go a lot further, which leads to my next question. So the path from a brilliant idea to a commercially viable business is challenging for entrepreneurs to navigate. I could strongly attest to that, and it's the support of groups like this at the table that help. That I know, like my company, Absolute Combustion, we started getting funding in like 2010 from Alberta Innovates, and it's the whole reason our company was able to commercialize their technology in 3 different industries. So stuff like that is huge. So my question to the panel is, how do ecosystems support the incubation and growth of innovative companies? I know I have answers to it, but I'd love yours.
I'll start this time. Scale, right? So we need to think big, but we need to think we need to think the steps along the way to get there. And scale in talent, access to talent, scale in investment, which we're starting to see on the right path. To Laura's earlier point, we don't need big wins right up front. We need lots of little wins. And the ecosystem is really all about supporting that and creating that and telling the stories of those wins to make it clear that there is great opportunity in tech in general, in this province, in this part of the country, and that it's worth moving here. If you're in this space, it's worth staying here. If you're young and getting educated in the space now, and it's worth building your business here. And that's all of those things lead to more, talent begets talent, entrepreneurs beget entrepreneurs. It feeds on itself. So.
I would say relationships and connections are a big part of this. We work quite a bit with incubators in other parts of the world, creating this pipeline to make sure that if our company wants to break into the Bay Area or Germany or India, we have that relationship to turn around and make sure our company has a warm handshake going in there. And vice versa. If we have a company wanting to break into the North American market, we will bring them in through Alberta and we'll make sure that all the partnerships are there to support them. But I think it's also, again, going back to my earlier comment about being able to pick up the phone or send an email and do an introduction. We had 2 of our companies about 6 or 7 weeks ago who had software developers in Ukraine, and they wanted to get their good people out with their families and we're struggling as to the resources. And so Friday afternoon, I sent an email out to Minister Doug office, and by Sunday morning it had gone through all of government, multiple layers from the email chain I got, and I had answers back that I could actually help our two companies with. And from there, we actually started to reach out into the community and say, what other resources are there for our companies to support them in this situation? And we were able to pull a lot of resources, and everybody was willing to jump on board and do this. And so I think relationships and connections are a big part of this.
The last thing I might add to that is this is not always a quick process, right? I actually look on a 1 to 30 year time horizon. And Russ, if you don't mind, I might kind of use Amii as an example. So my predecessors with a great vision started investing in Alberta, Innovates started investing in artificial intelligence 20 years ago this year, 20 years ago. We spent $50 million even at the university level to get the core researchers, the core professors, the core talent, the students. 5 years ago, we were the ones who came in and funded the setup of Amii, the not-for-profit, because it was on that horizon we were now needed to transform from an academic exercise into the free market. And Amii has been doing great in the free market and is going to do even more. But I think when it comes to commercialization, while some things can be achieved in a 0 to 1 year time frame, some other things will take the 1 to 30 year time frame before we see the impact. So my message here is, don't just think of what we have to do now. Think about what we need to do for the future. It's the combination, even though we may not have talked about artificial intelligence for the last 20 years or the first 20 years. But now in AI and machine learning and reinforced learning, and kudos to all the folks who have made this happen, including Russ here, we are number 2 in North America. We're one of the top 3 centers in the world. We are attracting more attention than people even realize. But we are only barely at the cusp of what's going to come out of that work. So commercialization is a multi-year journey, and I think plug into who you ever need along that multi-year journey to get where you want to be.
I'm just going to add a little additional element to this whole question. So I feel sorry for entrepreneurs when they're looking for help, because there is so much help out there, but it's very tough to understand who's who, what program is which, and how do I access this. I spend personally about 30% of my job just pathfinding entrepreneurs through our convoluted federal support system and other support systems. And I know there's a lot of well-intentioned people out there in the ecosystem wanting to help, but it's hard often to get these entrepreneurs to navigate to the right person at the right time, to the right program. And Brenda does that, Russ does that, others do that within the ecosystem. There was a lot of work for a period of time developing a portal, a single portal where entrepreneurs could go and get access to all the array of programs and supports out there. Guess what? It doesn't work. People come at different times, different needs, different levels of organization. So you can get some level of that support, but the best model, and the model that works most functionally, is no wrong window. And so that requires everyone in the ecosystem to know a little bit about what everyone else in the ecosystem is doing, so that when they come across an entrepreneur with a particular need or an idea, they can go and get navigated and pathfind and hopefully cut the time and the pain and the stress that those entrepreneurs have. It's messy, but it's also community-based. And so that's something I request of all of you in this room, is to get to know those different programs and supports that are out there to the level you can, so that you too can support entrepreneurs in navigating and pathfinding, because I think it's all of our own collective responsibility to do so.
I love that. We all go further together. So I'd like to open it up to audience questions. Does anyone have some questions for these incredible panelists? Ooh, there's one up there. Would you like it thrown to you or handed, just in case? I vote thrown, but.
Not working. Hello?
Could we turn on the catch boxes, please?
Hello? Oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you very much.
Golf club, Derek? Sorry, I was just kidding with my tosser there.
Sorry, we had someone else starting the.
Oh, sure.
We'll get to you, sorry, second.
Sorry. Yep.
Sorry, sir.
No problem. Quick question for the panel. Okay, without getting into semantics about success and once we get there, how does one stay on top? Canada at one point used to be a world leader as far as communications went. Think about Nortel, BlackBerry, et cetera. That's all evaporated. So how do we stay on top? How do we not become complacent?
That's a great question. I think the importance of adaptation and nimbleness in the core of our culture is essential. And markets are shifting more than quickly, and change is happening more rapidly than ever before. So it's really important to infuse the culture of resiliency and adaptation. So the energy sector is a great example in terms of the long importance and stability that sector had in terms of its structure and fundamentals for a long time, which is now beginning to get turned on its head, and watching how the energy sector is adapting to that. Things are going to adapt much more quickly in the digital world. And one of the concerns we have is, how do we retain the technology companies that we have here? Because they can leave a lot quicker than an energy, oil, and gas company can leave this province. So a lot relies on a multiple array of factors, but resiliency and talent. We also have to focus on quality of life here, and building a province and a jurisdiction where people want to live from a quality of life perspective. I was in the economic development game in the 90s, and it was all about who had the lowest taxes. That's only a small component now of what investors look at when they're trying to choose a jurisdiction to come in. So we have to look at the full gamut, the quality of life, the economic fundamentals, the resiliency and adaptation, and keep pressing us to do better and not rest on our laurels. We've had so many examples of getting comfortable in our own skin and having an abundance of wealth as a result. I think it's going to get harder and harder to maintain that competitiveness and resiliency.
You know, I may add that we tend to get complacent in our industries that do well. And I think we're going to shove out the word transition and bring in the word transformation. Because we can't wait for the time transition takes. We have to transform and get ahead of the game before others can get there for us. So I'll give you an example. We're working on a program called BBC, Bitumen Beyond Combustion. So why are we looking at this? By 2050, we all know where the net zero world's going, what we have to do. So we're saying, actually, our oil reserves our oil sands are very valuable. The bitumen is very valuable. Not just to process and burn. We can actually take the 54% that we're not processing in petroleum today and actually take carbon fibers out of that. We can take vanadium, precious metals. We can take asphaltenes and activated carbons for green energy, large storage batteries. The carbon fiber alone today, if we had full manufacturing capability of it, by taking it out, that bitumen, is worth $230 billion in North America. And we believe we can transform that industry such that we can become the leader in carbon fiber manufacturer over about the next 10 to 12 years. Okay? Not all the technology is there today. We can take the carbon fibers out. But again, I'm not interested in transition. I'm interested in transformation, where we lead the world in what we're doing, not following a few years later and trying to do catch up all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to come here, because you have so many diamonds in the rough that aren't polished, that take just a bit more work and a bit more effort. I think this is how we have to make things happen. My personal opinion.
Love it. I was going to say, amplifying our story. We have some incredible stories happening in Alberta right now, and I suspect not everybody knows about it in this room, let alone on the national and international stage. And I'll mention companies that are pivoting right now, like Patching Associates, Rigstar, Verge. These are traditional ag companies and oil and gas companies that are now moving into IoT. And they are changing their direction of their company, and that changes where they play on the world stage. We need to start talking about all the cool things we're doing here, and much louder than we are. And stories like what Laura was just talking about.
If I just may, just a sec, sorry, Russ. You know, and sorry, I have to give this ad, allow me. Inventures, the conference, is here June 1st through 3rd in Calgary. It's going to have 200 sessions in 2.5 days with world leaders in their field. That includes people in this audience that will be there talking on panels. The last one we had live in 2019, at the end of the 3-day conference, within 12 months, $246 million of business was done there. It's a business conference, guys. We actively brought in people from 36 countries. Why? Because they've never been here before. And when they get here, they love the people, they love the environment, they're blown away by the tech we have here, and they take that message back and then start thinking about bringing their companies back here. It's not a conference. It's a place to go do business. I tell people, go have a positive collision. And I think this is other ways that we get the word out. And that's just one, just like this conference.
I'm going to carry on from that. So the week before Inventures, in Edmonton, we're hosting AI Week. That's our inaugural AI Week. That is very much to showcase everything great that's been happening for 20 years in Alberta, and the future of what the next 20 years it has in store for us. We are bringing in we're bringing in AI experts from around the world, over 30 countries. Over 300 people so far that we have for sure. We're probably going to have about 500 in that area. And that's to showcase what's going on to our own community so that they understand what's happening, how AI has an effect on your life, what are the opportunities there, and to hopefully inspire some of the, we've got a K-12 program as part of it even, to hopefully inspire kids to start businesses in AI in Alberta, all the way through to what is the state of the art and where is the research going in AI. And so that comes right before Inventures, so that people can carry on through and do both to the extent they can. But to answer the original question, it is, we cannot take the foot off the gas. We cannot be complacent. We have to keep growing, keep telling the stories, and keep driving the ecosystem, and keep driving the business. So.
Absolutely, and we are very excited to be doing a full day of content at Inventures. That is one of the most incredible conferences, and thank you for putting that on, Laura. So I know I'm militant with time, and we are at our time right now. So if you have more questions, please come and speak to our incredible speakers out in the lobby, grab a tea or a coffee, get to know their businesses a bit more and all the different ways that they're supporting and helping Alberta. And thank you guys. Big round of applause.